Hello everyone, this is Code Ode. Welcome back. Today I want to talk about the data transfer object in the PHP world. And this is a software design pattern used to transfer data between different parts of a system, typically between layers, controller, service, and maybe repository, or between systems, the API responses. So what is a DTO? It's a simple data object. It has no business logic, and its only purpose is to move data around, and it may contain getters, and it's often immutable. Once created, its data cannot be changed. So what is the problem that is solved in the PHP world? For example, in our Laravel project, we use arrays to move data around, but arrays can have values of any data type, so we have no type safety. For example, if we have an array element with a key age, we can be sure that its value is a string or an integer. There is no integrity to the contents of the array. You can be sure that you always get the data that you want, given that the data is usually moved around. And there is no IDE auto-completion. Your IDE has no idea about the contents of your arrays. Now, given the latest features of the PHP world, we can bring in the full power of the DTO design pattern in our Laravel projects, for example. We can define class properties using the keyword read-only, which means our properties are immutable. Once we set the data, they cannot be changed. And that is what we need for the DTO design pattern. And the other thing is that we can define our class properties with their types. We can use string, integer, array, and so on. So now let's see the DTO design pattern in a real-life example using Laravel. So I have created this Laravel 12 project, and for PHP, I'm using the version 8.4.0, which is basically, I think, the latest version of PHP. Now, regarding this project, I'm using Pest for testing, which is pretty easy to set up. Just check the Pest documentation. And I'm also using Sanctum, which is, once again, pretty easy to set up. Please check the Laravel documentation. Okay. Now for the database migrations, I have this create users migrations, which I have added this, for which I have added this column age. And of course, in my app models user, I also added this age value to my fillable array. This is going to be a simple API application, so make sure to add this api.php in your routes folder and add this route. Here you can see that we are using the Sanctum middleware for authentication. Now, make sure that in your Bootstrap app.php, you have this API in your configuration. Now, let's actually check our code. So app HTTP, then user controller, and it's pretty simple. This is our store method. So we are creating users, we are validating the data, and then we are calling this create user method from our user service, which we are injecting right here. And we are passing the validated array data. And eventually, we are returning the user object. Now, let's go to that user service. So services, user service.php, which is pretty simple. We take this array data, and then we create a user and return it. But we are assuming that the data has name, email, age, password, and so on. This is a very oversimplified example, but in real life situation, things are much more complex. So now the next thing that I want to show you, it's my test. So test feature user control test.php. So these are my pest tests. This is the first one, pretty simple. Second one, and the last one. And to make sure this is working, let's run PHP artisan test. Nice. So you can see that all the tests have passed. Now the next thing that we have to do is to actually refactor this to use the data transfer object design pattern. So let's refactor this to use a DTO for this create user. In our app folder, create a new folder, DTOs like this. And let's create a new file, user DTO.php. And let's define this class, so namespace app DTOs like this, class user DTO. Let's create the constructor like this. And let's think about the parameters for this constructor. Well, we need a name, we need an email, age, and the password. So let's do that. Public, read only to make it immutable. And let's define this type. This is going to be string. This is going to be the name. Public, read only, string, email. Public, read only, string, password. And eventually public, read only. And this is going to be optional. And we use this syntax with a question mark. This is going to be age. And by default, it's going to be null like this. So let's fix this. So public. Nice. And you can see now that we have a structure that we actually understand. While when using arrays, we don't have a structure. Arrays are unstructured. We don't know the data types, the integrity of the data, but using a DTO, things are much more clear. Okay. Now let's go to our user control.php and we need to refactor this to use the DTO. So this is going to be new user DTO like this. Make sure to import this. So I want to use name arguments and this is going to be name. So validated name, email, validated email. Let's see, password, validated password, and eventually age, validated age. Otherwise, this is going to be no, because you can see that this is nullable in our HTTP validation layer. Nice. Now we need to open up this services, user service.php, and we need to refactor this. So this is going to be user DTO. Let's call this user DTO like this. Make sure to import this. So instead of this, we use user DTO name. Let's see, user DTO email, user DTO age, like this. And eventually, let's see, user DTO password. So let's check the tests. PHP artisan tests like this. And you can see that all the tests are passing. So basically, this is the whole thing. This is the whole data transfer object design pattern. This is how a DTO looks like. This is more a pure approach to the DTO design pattern. You'll usually see different approaches to this design pattern, but I like to go with this approach. So basically, this is our DTO. The structure is pretty clear, and the way we use it is pretty clear. And we can change this. We have type safety using the DTO, which basically acts like a struct, if you know languages like C, for example. I hope you find this really useful, and I invite you to read more about this design pattern and how it has been adapted to the Laravel world. Please like and subscribe. See you next time.